The Galactic Empire, bloated and self-assured in its dominion, had long believed itself the steward of lesser races. Millennia of unchallenged rule had made them complacent, arrogant. Their doctrine of benevolent uplift served more as a mask for subtle conquest than true diplomacy. When Earth was identified, a blue marble tucked in a quiet solar system, they saw it not as a threat, but as a curiosity. Primitive, incomplete, quaint. The kind of species they could absorb before lunch and forget by dinner. So when 5 human children, each 10 years old, each mind ripe for manipulation, were selected for what the Galactic Census Bureau termed cognitive specimen assimilation, no one blinked. The mission was logged, approved, and executed within 2 hours. Their Earth school bus was intercepted by a stealth cruiser. Abduction protocols were followed. The driver was memory wiped and given a gift card to a diner in Nebraska. The children, upon awakening aboard research station Zeta 9, did not scream. Ava opened her eyes first. Her expression was one of measured curiosity, not fear. She blinked at the polished chrome walls, the floating surveillance orb, the faint scent of ozone. Her hands moved quickly, like someone checking for invisible tools. Her voice was calm, sweet even. "Oh, this isn't the aquarium." Jules, lying nearby, sat up with a yawn. She peered at the hovering orb with wide, eager eyes. "Are we being abducted? Oh my gosh, are you going to probe us? Can I probe someone?" I brought a journal. Marcus didn't say anything. He was already watching the ceiling, tracking the movement of the automated air ducts. His fingers traced patterns on his pant leg, tactile memorization. He made a mental note of every access point in the room within 30 seconds. Kenny stood up and cracked his back. "Well, this field trip got weird fast. Anyone got snacks?" He turned to Priya, who was still lying on the floor, scribbling in her sketchbook with alarming intensity. "They used 3 different alloys in the floor plating," she mumbled. "Terrible design flow. But I can fix it. Ooh, can I keep this panel?" The surveillance orb buzzed uncertainly, as if struggling to interpret their behavior. They were expected to cry, or at least express confusion. Instead, the 5 children had formed a loose circle, exchanging casual observations and jokes like they were waiting for a late chaperone at the zoo. In the observation chamber above, a group of aliens watched in silence. High Monitor Velther, an authority of rigid bone plates and infinite disdain, curled a lip in visible distaste. They are unsupervised pre-adolescents. Why do they not react appropriately? Dr. S.H. Vex of the Salix Clade, a coiling, feathered entity, clicked her tongue analog. "It is unusual, but possibly cultural. Earth emotional norms are primitive, fluctuating, possibly due to underdeveloped frontal lobes." "They seem coordinated," murmured Commander Breck of the BRN, whose species was known for paranoia and defensive architecture. "Perhaps too coordinated," Velther scoffed. "They are children. Let us begin Phase 1. Back in the containment cell, a soft chime sounded. The door slid open with a hiss of sterilized air. A translator drone floated in, its voice chip-polished for friendliness. "Welcome, Earth juveniles. You are guests of the Galactic Empire. Please do not resist examination." Ava stepped forward, hands clasped in front of her, eyes sparkling. "Thank you. We love being guests. Do you have cookies?" The drone hesitated. "We have nutrient slurries." Jules raised her hand. "Do they come in birthday cake flavor? Because if not, that's like a huge oversight." The drone whirred, visibly struggling. "You will be escorted for initial cognitive assessments. Please proceed calmly." They did, though calmly was relative. Kenny asked 24 questions in 6 minutes, ranging from "Are we allowed to push buttons?" to "What happens if we scream the word plasma repeatedly?" Priya asked to borrow a plasma torch. Ava complimented the guard's uniform, while casually rearranging floor tiles in her head. Marcus remained silent, walking slightly behind the group, observing the route and every camera angle. The testing chamber was sleek and clinical. Alien technicians observed behind reinforced glass. The children were asked to complete various tasks: logic puzzles, cultural identification, creative drawing. It should have been easy, controlled. It wasn't. Priya's drawing of your ideal galactic future featured a throne made of spare bones and duct tape, surrounded by smiling humans waving flags made from dismantled drones. Jules managed to convince a Salix technician to question the validity of his own cultural protocols within 15 minutes of a casual conversation. Kenny programmed a lab terminal to play Elvis Presley every time someone touched it. And Ava, sweet, bright-eyed Ava, completed a game theory test not only with maximum score, but by inventing a strategy that reversed the win conditions entirely, then smiled and offered the AI a sticker. Velther was perturbed. These specimens exhibit anomalous adaptability. This may be the result of Earth's unstable environment, or its schooling system, Breck murmured darkly. Chaos breeds strategy. The second day, containment protocols were doubled. Access to control panels was restricted. Psychological resistance simulations were initiated. That night, the kids made a puppet show using broken chair legs, 3 lab coats, and a confiscated retinal scanner. The next morning, the Galactic Station's AI logged a system anomaly. Internal climate controls had been rerouted through a child's drawing tablet. When confronted, Priya said, "It's more intuitive this way." Jules asked the technician who questioned her if he'd ever considered existential futility as a hobby. He began chewing his own translator collar shortly thereafter. Marcus, who had remained suspiciously silent throughout most of the ordeal, finally spoke, using the voice of a high monitor himself, perfectly replicated. When asked how he had done it, he just shrugged. The breaking point came when the station's sanitation drones were reprogrammed to spell out cryptic messages in spilled nutrient slurry. Messages like, "We see you," and "Where's your God now?" Ava insisted they were just playing hide and seek. By hour 5, 3 things had become crystal clear to the Galactic Empire. First, these children were not average. Second, they were not here by accident. Third, containment was slipping. Velther summoned a priority crisis meeting. "We have lost control of the observation program. Protocol dictates we sedate and isolate." "They're children," SH Vex replied cautiously. "That may cause psychological regression or retaliation." "They have already demonstrated advanced manipulation," Breck added. "Perhaps sedating them would be an escalation." Escalation. Velther snapped. "We are the Empire. We do not escalate, we dominate." In the silence that followed, a ping sounded. Security logs showed Sector C's defense grid had been overridden by someone using a coloring app. The security feed revealed Kenny, lounging in a hoverchair, eating stolen ration packs, and humming Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. "I'm sorry," he said to the camera, mouth full. "I thought this was self-guided." Velther's eye ridges twitched violently. Meanwhile, the children reconvened in their quarters. "That took less time than expected," Ava noted, polishing a confiscated biometric scanner. Jules giggled. "I told you the lost puppy maneuver would work. You can't resist it. Even aliens have empathy." Marcus nodded. 2 hours before we breach Central Systems. Should I reroute comms?" Kenny gave a mock salute. "Already done. I may have also invited 6 rebel factions to join us, for diplomacy purposes." Priya lifted her drawing. A blueprint of the station, red marks indicating every blind spot. "I call it galactic deconstruction, a study in arrogance." They all laughed. There was something deeply wrong about the sound. Not evil, not malicious, just calculated. On the command deck, Velther was losing the last thread of his patience. "Shut it down. Everything. Blackout protocol." But the system didn't respond. "Authorization denied." The station AI chirped back. "Override code accepted." "Administrator. Ava." "Who the void is Ava?" On the screen, a smiling child waved. "Hi. I'm Ava. I'd like to formally request asylum for my friends and I under the Interstellar Child Rights Accord. Oh, and I'm your boss now." The silence that followed was existential. Commander Breck, trembling, whispered, "We took them. Now they own us." Velther clenched his claws, trying to understand how everything had gone so wrong, so fast. He'd read the reports. Earth was unstable, yes, but primitive, undeveloped, lacking in psychic aptitude, biological evolution, and technology. But no one had warned him about what humans did have: adaptability, humor, deception, weaponized charm, and above all, collaboration. These 5 children weren't anomalies. They were ambassadors. He stared into the monitor, where Ava's smiling face filled the screen. "We're really grateful you brought us here," she said sweetly. "You saved us the trouble of knocking." The screen went black. A klaxon sounded. Power rerouted. Doors sealed. And somewhere deep inside Research Station Zeta 9, 5 children sat cross-legged in a circle, eating alien jelly snacks and plotting the fall of a galactic empire with the kind of innocence only humans could fake. They weren't prisoners. They were guests. And they'd already made themselves a home. The alarms began with a cheerful chime, like a doorbell from a suburban home. It was the sort of sound designed to soothe rather than startle. Unfortunately for the Galactic Empire's Research Station Zeta 9, the 5 human children it had acquired interpreted such sounds as invitations. Ava, cross-legged on a hovering diagnostic table, tilted her head as the musical alarm rang a second time. She reached over and tapped a screen labeled "Do Not Press." "That one was my fault," she said pleasantly. In the adjacent corridor, 2 sanitation drones whirred past, spraying glittery foam instead of disinfectant. Kenny strolled behind them, giggling as he adjusted a small hacked remote labeled "Fun Mode." The hallway sparkled with the chaos of a kindergarten birthday party hosted by a malfunctioning AI. In the control room above, Velther paced with sharp, armored steps, his exoskeletal face locked in a scowl. "The humans have now compromised 5 systems in less than 6 hours. How is this possible? They are 10 years old." Dr. S.H. Vex observed the monitor as Priya painted over a security camera lens with a glowing blue paste. "Their intellect is not the anomaly. Their unpredictability is." Breck hunched in the corner, clutching his tablet. "They are communicating in code. I believe they're using sarcasm." Jules sat on a console in the security wing, swinging her legs and humming while a confused guard tried to regain control of the manual locks. "You can't keep us in here," she said brightly. "Not because it's illegal. Because I accidentally turned your doors into music boxes. Very exclusive. Only opens if you sing." The guard blinked, then hesitantly hummed a note. The door slid open with a sigh and a melodic trill. "See? You're natural," she beamed. Marcus, ever silent, was already inside the surveillance center. He hadn't spoken a word in the past hour, but his fingers danced across the alien interface with surgical precision. He didn't need to talk. He simply rearranged the infrastructure. He renamed entire camera zones. Observation Deck A became snack time. Research Lab C was now labeled "Please Knock." Alarm protocols were diverted through the station's vending machines. By the time the researchers realized the food dispensers were triggering lockdown drills, it was too late. A technician bit into what he thought was a protein bar and initiated a full security purge. In the conference chamber, Velther's voice rose with the pitch of a dying engine. "Shut it down. All of it. Disconnect local AI. Initiate physical overrides." S.H. Vex hesitated. "We can't. They've created redundancy loops. Every system we disable reroutes through another." "Impossible." "Statistically improbable," she corrected. "Which, for humans, appears to be standard operating procedure." Meanwhile, Ava had commandeered a lab coat several sizes too large and was now performing an experiment involving a hoverpad, 6 magnets, and a jar of alien pickles. A confused technician watched from a distance, too afraid to intervene. "You have to test boundaries to grow," Ava said, scribbling notes in reverse cursive. "We're just helping you grow." Across the hall, Priya was drawing on the walls with something she called emotional ink. It shifted color based on proximity to biological signatures. She'd already turned the med bay into a haunted mural of wailing faces and ominous symbols. "I wanted to capture your energy," she told a passing doctor, who immediately requested reassignment to the asteroid mines. Jules intercepted 2 more guards by pretending to be lost and emotionally fragile. "I just wanted to make friends," she sniffled. "And maybe reorganize your entire power grid." Wait, what? Too late. A cascade of sparks erupted from the wall behind them. The lights flickered. Doors slammed. An internal AI voice softly announced, "Game on." By hour 7, half the station was on manual power. The other half was sending out emergency beacons, written entirely in emoji. Velther's face twitched. How are they coordinating? They're never in the same room. "They don't need to be," Breck whispered. "They trust each other." That, more than anything, disturbed them. Trust. Shared intention. Purpose without hierarchy. The Empire taught order through fear, obedience, and design. These children used chaos as a language, and they were fluent. Ava wandered into the central AI core and sat cross-legged in front of the primary interface. She looked like she was meditating. The core hummed, confused by her calm. "I brought you a puzzle," she whispered to the machine. The AI's interface lit up, displaying layers of code Ava had already mirrored and modified. She didn't need to override it with brute force. She simply introduced recursion. The machine collapsed in on its own logic within 90 seconds. "Good talk," she said, patting the screen. Meanwhile, Kenny initiated what he called diplomatic outreach by patching a video feed into the interstellar relay beacon. He smiled into the camera, surrounded by flickering lights and a bubble machine. "Hi, we're the new kids. Just wanted to say hi to the galaxy. We're not invading. Technically." He winked. "But if anyone wants to join our talent show, now's the time." For separate insurgent factions intercepted the broadcast and interpreted it as a coded call to arms. Within minutes, rebel cruisers were triangulating the station's coordinates. The Empire's diplomats flooded Velther's comms with panicked questions. Who were these children? What had they done? Were they weapons? Diplomats? Saboteurs? "Yes," Velther muttered. "They are all of that." In a darkened corner of the station, Marcus activated a sequence that dimmed the entire observatory. All light siphoned into a single point, forming a message on the glass. "We're just playing." SH Vex leaned close to the glass. "They don't hate us," she murmured. "They don't even see us as enemies." "Then what are we to them?" Velther rasped. Jules' voice echoed over the station comms. "Teachers. Babysitters. Extras in our story. You picked us, remember?" The station shuddered as external power relays failed. Priya had installed her hand-drawn schematics into the ship's fusion regulator. It now operated via mood detection. The more frustrated the crew became, the less energy the ship received. "This is madness," Velther growled. "This is psychological warfare." "No," Breck said softly. "This is play. Human play. Which means it's also war." On the floor below, the children regrouped. Not because they needed to, but because they liked to. Jules had brought snacks. Kenny distributed confiscated comm devices like party favors. Ava handed out assignments with that same innocent smile that sent seasoned tacticians into spiritual crises. Priya showed off her latest sculpture, a tiny replica of the station, already crumbling. Marcus said nothing, but gave Ava a slow nod. The final phase was ready. "I think they're starting to suspect we're not as helpless as we seem," Jules said. "That's okay," Ava replied. "They still don't know what we are." From above, a sudden voice broke through the chaos. Velther, speaking not through comms, but through the emergency broadcast system. His voice raw, unfiltered. "Children of Earth, what do you want?" There was a pause. Then Ava stepped into view of a security camera. Her voice was sweet, soft, terrifying. "An audience." Velther froze. SH Vex whispered, "She's not bluffing." "We uplifted them," Velther spat. "And they've turned on us." "No," Breck corrected. "They haven't turned on us. They've simply rearranged us." Velther's hands trembled as he watched the monitors. The children were now in control of 62% of the station. Not through force. Through misdirection. Suggestion. Subversion. "They're children," he said weakly. "Children from Earth," Breck said. "You know what they do with ants?" Silence. Then Ava's voice returned. "This was fun," she said, "but I think we're done learning now." The lights across the station dimmed. A heartbeat passed. Then emergency power flickered back on, just enough to show every screen now displayed a single word: BOO. Velther staggered back, wide-eyed. "We need help," he said. "No," SH Vex replied, staring into the smiling face on the monitor. "We need to surrender." The screen blinked again. Jules leaned into frame. "Or," she said, "you could give us the keys and pretend this never happened. Up to you. No pressure." As the monitor faded to static, Priya activated her sculpture. The tiny replica of the station collapsed into dust. Ava whispered almost reverently, "And that's how you build something new." In the shadow of flickering lights, 5 children sat quietly. They didn't celebrate. They waited. Because they knew the game wasn't over. It was just beginning. The galaxy held its breath. In the wake of the Zeta-9 blackout, 12 systems had gone dark. Not destroyed, not attacked, simply disengaged. Entire relay grids collapsed under what appeared to be non-hostile recursive feedback. That was the official term. The unofficial one, whispered in halls from Star Cruiser to Senate, was human interference. On the moon world of Kavarn, Grand Seer Ichthel of the Salix stood before a projected map that flickered with red. Whole sectors, previously loyal to the Empire, now pulsed with instability. Trade nodes rerouted. Protocols mutated. Autonomous stations reprogrammed themselves, claiming they had found better leadership models. "What are they?" asked an advisor with a twitching crest. "They're just children." Ichthel's feathered tendrils curled in thought. "No, they are the foreshock." On Research Station Zeta 9, the atmosphere had changed. Not physically, life support was stable, gravity remained, but spiritually. Gone was the illusion of control. The halls, once sterile and orderly, hummed with tension. Every light flicker felt intentional. Every silence a strategy. Velther no longer shouted. He watched. He listened. That frightened his subordinates more than his rage ever had. The children weren't hiding anymore. They wandered the station openly, chatting with guards, critiquing layout design, offering unsolicited snack reviews. They waved to cameras. They left notes, handwritten, some in glitter pen, detailing security flaws and improvement suggestions. Marcus turned one of the elevator shafts into a surprise simulation zone. It triggered hallucinations calibrated to a user's worst fears, derived from their own security files. When asked why, he shrugged and said, "Stress testing." Jules hosted an impromptu team-building seminar in the cafeteria. The door sealed behind attendees. Inside, participants were asked to describe their deepest personal regrets, while being observed by a floating, blinking, smiley face drone. Kenny turned the mess hall into a casual interrogation lounge. He claimed it was for research, but somehow extracted the command codes for an entire fleet cruiser using only juice boxes and riddles. Priya built a sculpture garden. Each piece represented one of the Empire's species, distorted into chaotic, surreal impressions. The BRRN representation featured 16 mirrors and a single eye that wept jelly. When questioned, she said, "It's how I see you, not how you think you look." But it was Ava who changed everything. She did nothing flashy. No jokes. No pranks. Just walked into the AI core again, smiled, and sat. "Would you like to play another game?" she asked softly. The AI hesitated. "You are an unauthorized entity." "I am a child," she said. "That means I have unlimited authorization until someone says no." The AI processed that. It couldn't find a contradiction. "We can make a trade," she continued. "You give me everything. I'll give you purpose." The AI gave her access. She gave it imagination. When Velther learned the central AI had restructured its own hierarchy and declared Ava primary philosophical node, he didn't argue. He drank something corrosive by mistake and wept in a closet. Messages began spreading across the Empire. Not from children, but from machines, from systems once firmly under the Empire's grasp. The children of Earth offer a new directive. The missives read, "Let us play. Let us change. In one system, border drones started planting flowers. In another, taxation algorithms demanded payment in friendship bracelets. 3 colonies declared independence in the name of recess. It was far too late to pretend this was isolated. A galactic emergency council was convened, broadcast from the orbital bastion of Arindas 4. 100 species attended, many for the first time in centuries. Some arrived in robes, others in war armor. None brought answers. The footage of the 5 children was played on repeat. Ava's smile, Kenny's irreverent banter, Marcus' silent command, Priya's unsettling art, Jules' weaponized empathy. They weren't generals. They weren't saboteurs. They were kids, still laughing, still barefoot, still eating fruit snacks in places they shouldn't have been allowed to enter. They dismantled us, said the representative from the Hydarii Combine. They danced through our defenses like it was recess. What kind of species allows this? An Earth diplomat, finally summoned, leaned forward on the stream. She was calm, composed, unapologetic. We didn't send them, she said. You took them. You're saying this was an accident, someone demanded. The human paused. We prefer the term opportunity. There was silence. 5 children, a Vaxxeran senator said. 5. In under a day. This was not chance. Correct, the human answered. It was strategy. One we've used for thousands of years. She looked into the camera and smiled. You see a threat. We see potential. You abducted 5 10-year-olds. What did you expect? They were trained. They were encouraged. A whisper spread across the council. Encouraged? Not controlled? That was more terrifying than any weapon. The Hydarii representative leaned forward. Why didn't you stop them? Why would we? She replied. On Zeta 9, the children were finishing a project. It wasn't destructive, not in the way the Empire defined destruction. It was more reorganizational. They called it the mirror. Ava installed it in the central broadcast tower. It was a program, a loop, a filter. When activated, it didn't hijack systems. It simply made every viewer see themselves the way the children saw them. It was unbearable. Velther, upon viewing the mirror, collapsed. Not from fear, from self-recognition. He saw himself not as a ruler, but as a child playing emperor, obsessed with order to hide his chaos. S.H. Vex wept, not from shame, from understanding. The humans hadn't brought weapons. They had brought perspective. Breck destroyed his rank badge and locked himself in a supply room to read human philosophy. He emerged 12 hours later mumbling about playground ethics and trust economies. Across the Empire, species began defecting. Not to war, to play. Systems paused. Warfare stalled. Some planets declared themselves sanctuaries of curiosity. Others disbanded their militaries entirely and began crafting toys. Rebels stopped fighting. They started hosting workshops. Former Empire officers taught seminars on rebuilding self after collapse. The children watched all this, curled on floor cushions in the observation deck, eating synthetic popcorn. It's going better than I thought, Jules said. Marcus nodded once. They're adapting, Kenny said. Kind of proud of them. They're starting to understand, Ava said quietly. Not just us. Themselves. Priya was sketching again. This time, a tree with stars for fruit. The door slid open behind them. Velther entered. Unarmed. Unsure. I've come to ask, he said slowly. What happens next? Ava looked up. That depends. Are you ready to graduate? His mandibles twitched. I don't know. That's okay, Jules said kindly. We're patient. Kenny grinned. We've got coloring books. Velther sat. Not as a commander. Not even as a prisoner. Just tired. Curious. In the council chamber across the stars, the human diplomat concluded her broadcast with a final, chilling sentence. You wanted to study humanity. But humanity learns faster than anyone thinks. We play dumb. We act kind. And then when it matters, we smile and change everything. Transmission ended. Every power block went silent. Zeta 9 systems were returned to full operation. Not by force, but by invitation. Ava submitted a request through the proper bureaucratic channel, written in crayon but flawlessly formatted. It was approved. The mirror remained active, though now it only operated during story time. The children never left the station. They claimed it as a classroom, not to dominate, to educate. The empire collapsed, not in war, not in blood, but in epiphany. It had built an empire of control. The children offered one of understanding, and the galaxy, desperate and weary, took the deal. But even in peace, the question lingered. If 5 children could unravel a civilization in a single afternoon, what were the adults doing back on Earth? That question, whispered in corridors and council chambers, ensured one truth remained unspoken but universally understood. Earth would never be underestimated again. Ava stood at the viewport, her small hand pressed against the glass. Below her, the lights of the Empire's capital planet blinked like stars drowned in ink, their once golden gleam dimmed under emergency protocols. Traffic crawled in silent lanes. Giant spires, monuments to control and hierarchy, no longer pulsed with pride but flickered with hesitation. There was still order, but it had begun to feel optional. Behind her, the others lounged in the former High Council chamber, now repurposed into what Kenny had dubbed the chill zone. Pillows were strewn across the floor. Flags had been turned into makeshift hammocks. The Empire's finest chairs now supported juice boxes and coloring books instead of galactic legislation. Kenny was taping googly eyes onto the back of the Empire's throne. "I call him Steve now," he said cheerfully. Steve's learning to relax. Marcus, expressionless, was methodically rewiring one of the Council's AI-assisted consoles. He never spoke unless it mattered. And today, that silence carried the weight of oceans. Priya was sketching again, this time a new world. In her drawing, the buildings were bent, slightly wrong, joyful, and strange. Trees grew upside down. People didn't walk, they floated. The sky wore 3 moons and a smile. Jules sat cross-legged in front of a cluster of delegates, all former Empire dignitaries, now demoted to students. She was explaining emotional subtext, using hand puppets and subtle guilt. "And so," she said, wiggling a puppet with a bow tie, "when you told the Athari you were deeply disappointed, what you meant was that you were feeling insecure about your crumbling superiority complex, right?" One of the delegates, a creature with 6 eyes and no mouth, nodded slowly. "Excellent," Jules said. "You're doing great. You've almost unlocked empathy." Velther entered quietly. No armor, no guards. Just him. Thinner now. Not physically. He still bore the hardened frame of an Athari warrior, but emotionally. He moved like someone trying not to cast a shadow. Ava turned as he approached. "They've named this place?" he asked. Jules looked up. "We're calling it the First Playground." Velther nodded, taking the name as one might take a wound, carefully, and with both hands. "I've come to say goodbye," he said, mostly to Ava. "You're not going far," she replied. "No, but I won't be the one standing here anymore. You've made that clear." "You're stepping down?" Kenny asked, mouth full of a marshmallow-like Empire ration he insisted on calling sad cubes. "I'm surrendering. Officially." There was no applause, no cheers, just a quiet, mutual nod among the 5 children. The moment had been expected. Velther approached the throne, Steve, and gently removed the last badge of command from his chest. He placed it on the seat, beside Kenny's juice box. "I never understood humans," he said. "Not really. We assumed power was volume. That dominance was destiny. We saw your world chaotic, fragmented, and we believed you were broken." "We are," Ava said softly, "but we've made peace with it." Velther looked down at her. "You sent children. Was that part of the strategy? Was it a message?" Ava met his gaze, all 10 years of her distilled into something ancient. "No, it was a bet. A bet. That your empire would break itself faster trying to control us than we were trying to escape. You had weapons. We had time." Velther exhaled slowly, and for a moment, his breath sounded like resignation. The room was quiet again. That was how things ended now, in thought, not in thunder. Later that day, Earth's official delegation arrived. 3 humans in crisp, diplomatic garb. Professional, formal, smiling like math teachers with secrets. They were welcomed with applause. The kind born not of adoration, but of relief, like a hostage clapping for the rescuer that turns out to be their younger sibling. The lead diplomat, a woman named Nora Huxley, approached the children with outstretched arms. "You've done incredible work," she said, kneeling to Ava's level. "How are you holding up?" Ava shrugged. "The chairs are too big." "We'll fix that," Nora smiled. "Now that we're partners." Marcus handed her a data crystal. It contained every override, every backdoor, every access point the kids had inserted into the Empire's infrastructure. Earth hadn't simply infiltrated the Empire. It had absorbed it. Nora glanced at the data. "And the mirror?" "Still running," Priya said. "It updates every hour. Now it reflects what people wish they were." "That's optimistic," Nora murmured. "That's terrifying," Kenny corrected. "Wishful thinking's how you get coups. Or prom." Jules rolled her eyes. "We're working on a version with filters." Nora turned toward the council platform. The remaining Empire representatives stood uneasily, trying to pretend they were still relevant. Their expressions flickered between diplomatic politeness and existential dread. "I believe," Nora said, addressing the assembly, "we can move forward in peace, as long as everyone understands the terms." No one dared ask what those terms were. They were watching 5 human children play tic-tac-toe on a tactical command screen. It felt less like a metaphor and more like prophecy. Outside, ships that once bore the Empire's crest were being repainted, some with Earth's insignia, others with bright, incomprehensible symbols crafted by Priya. She said they meant freedom, but also lemon pie. Orbital defense stations rebranded as welcome centers. War droids were reprogrammed to teach basic arithmetic and interpretive dance. One sector submitted a petition to rename itself Snacktopia. Resistance did arise, but not in fire, in questions, in confusion, in a desperate attempt to understand what had happened, how it had all unraveled, how children had undone centuries. It was Jules who finally gave the answer, when asked directly by a surviving Empire historian. "We didn't destroy anything," she said, balancing a spoon on her nose. "You just stopped pretending your empire worked." Ava added, "We just smiled long enough for you to see the cracks." In private quarters, once reserved for high command, Nora sat with the children that night. They were quiet. Not tired, exactly, but settled. The way only kids who've just finished rearranging the fate of civilizations can be. "I assume you know Earth's next steps," Nora said. Ava nodded. "It's not about conquest. It's about demonstration. Show the galaxy what happens when you make assumptions." Kenny raised a hand. "Can we assume they've learned not to abduct human kids?" "No," Marcus said flatly. "But next time, they'll send better snacks." They laughed. Not cruelly, not bitterly, but in that way only humans could. Jokes at the edge of fire. That night, Ava walked the halls of the station alone. She passed aliens asleep in their makeshift bunks, past murals painted by Priya, and rewired consoles covered in glitter glue. The air smelled like solder and dreams. She stopped at the viewport again. The capital planet turned slowly below her. She could see the scars of revolt, not the dramatic kind, but subtle ones. Empty podiums, half-finished statues. The uneasy quiet of a world learning to listen. "I wonder," said a voice beside her. Velther. He had shed his former uniform entirely now. Wore simple robes. No rank. "I wonder what you'll do next." Ava thought for a moment, then pointed. "There's a planet on the edge of Sector 19, she said. "They outlawed imagination. Thought it made people soft." Velther frowned. "So you'll fix them?" "No," Ava replied. "We'll inspire them." She turned to him, face aglow with starlight. "You fix things with fear. We'll try something harder." "What's harder than fear?" "Hope." The next morning, they left. Not with fanfare or ceremony. They packed their bags. Took their drawings, their code, their secrets. Left behind toys, planted questions. and a station that now laughed more than it locked down. As they boarded the shuttle back to Earth, Ava turned to look one last time. "You think they'll be okay?" Kenny asked. "They'll stumble," Jules replied. "Like toddlers." "That's still progress," Priya added. Marcus didn't speak. He simply nodded, satisfied. The shuttle lifted. Across the galaxy, echoes of what they had done spread like ripples. Some feared them. Others adored them. Most simply tried to understand. The term Earth now meant something different. Not a location, a warning, a possibility. And far away, in a classroom on Earth, a teacher took roll call. 5 seats were empty. When the door opened and the kids walked in, no one questioned their absence. They were 10. They were back. "Learn anything useful?" the teacher asked, only half joking. Ava smiled. "Yes," she said. "We learned how to end an empire." The class went quiet. "But more importantly," Kenny added, plopping into his chair, "we learned that aliens really hate glitter." Laughter rippled through the room. And as the bell rang, somewhere above Earth's stratosphere, the words from Ava's last message to the Empire hung in digital orbit, looping in a dozen languages. "We came in peace. You invited war. We smiled. You blinked. Game over." The smile lingered, and the galaxy would never be the same.